What if one soldier could rise from obscurity to rule all of Europe? That man was Napoleon Bonaparte. Corsican by birth and artillery officer by trade, Napoleon Bonaparte was an unlikely candidate to conquer a continent. Born in 1769 on the island of Corsica, Napoleon grew up far from the centers of power in Paris or London. Yet within a decade, he would be at the center of French and European politics, leading France to victory against the armies of Europe and reshaping the continent according to the ideals of the French Revolution. How did he do it? At the age of 13, Napoleon left home to study at a military academy in mainland France, which was a big deal, because Corsica was a newly annexed part of France with a distinct culture and language. It was an act of immense ambition, even if his family didn't have much money and his father opposed the move. Military academies were only open to the sons of nobles or the wealthy, but Napoleon charmed his way in and excelled at the school. And when he graduated, he joined the French army just as the French Revolution was turning the country upside down. Amidst this chaos, Napoleon proved himself a brilliant artillery officer. When the revolution turned violent, he supported the new government. And as a reward, he was promoted to general, a remarkably rapid rise for an artillery officer. 2 years later, at the age of 27, he led a successful military campaign in Italy. The war was against Austria, and at the end of it, Napoleon was a hero. The Treaty of Campo Formio gave him more territory for France and made him famous throughout Europe. But Napoleon wasn't satisfied with being just a military hero. He wanted power. So he went to Egypt in 1798 to take on the British. There he scored some early victories, but ultimately failed to dislodge the British from Egypt. However, Napoleon returned home a conquering hero and seized control of France in a coup d'etat. At first, he shared power as first consul, but soon after he declared himself emperor. Napoleon now had the power to reshape Europe according to the ideals of the French Revolution: equality before the law and merit over privilege. To achieve this, he went to war against the kings and emperors of Europe. Over the next decade, he fought 6 major wars against coalitions that sought to stop him. And astonishingly, he won almost all of them. At Austerlitz, Jena, and Friedland, Napoleon outmaneuvered his enemies and crushed their armies. Only at the Caransebes did he suffer a defeat, but it was inconclusive. As he conquered, he spread the ideals of the French Revolution, establishing meritocracies in place of monarchies. This was most evident in his legal system. In 1804, he introduced the Napoleonic Code, a comprehensive set of laws that applied equally to all French subjects. It abolished feudal privileges and asserted the supremacy of the state over the church. However, Napoleon wasn't content with just conquering Europe. He wanted to conquer all of Europe. His wars stretched from Spain to Russia, yet his greatest victory also proved to be his undoing. At Austerlitz, Napoleon had defeated an alliance of Austria, Russia, and Sweden, subduing Austria so completely that he occupied Vienna and forced the Austrians to cede even more territory. The peace treaty that followed made him ruler of most of Central Europe. Yet this victory came at a terrible cost. More than 500,000 soldiers had died, and much of Europe hated French occupation. In particular, Russia resented Napoleon's occupation of their ally Austria. In 1812, Napoleon invaded Russia with 600,000 men, expecting a quick victory. But the Russians proved tough, and they lured Napoleon deep into Russia, burning their villages behind them. As winter approached, Napoleon's army became trapped in Russia and nearly starved to death. By the time they retreated back to France, only a few thousand soldiers remained. With their army destroyed, France was unable to resist the coming coalition. In 1814, the British, Austrians, and Prussians entered Paris and forced Napoleon to abdicate. He was exiled to the island of Elba off the coast of Italy, but Napoleon wasn't done yet. He escaped Elba and returned to France. For 100 days, he once again seized power and raised a new army. But at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815, he was finally defeated. The British and Prussians smashed his forces, ending his hopes of empire. Once again, Napoleon was forced to abdicate, and he was exiled, this time to the remote island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic. Here, the former emperor spent his last years writing his memoirs. He died in 1821, but his legacy endured. Napoleon had been the first modern conqueror, a soldier who carved out an empire not for personal gain, but to spread the ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity. He established modern institutions, legal codes, and military organizations. Above all, he proved that one man could make a difference. Napoleon Bonaparte, soldier, emperor, and the man who wore the crown of kings. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.